look at the way women dress at the Grammys now.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when it was kind of starting, when Norman took some pictures of Linda Ronstadt in her underwear and Carly Simon, you know, and I thought, oh,
Yeah.
God, do we got to do this? So I just decided to just be naked on my record. Get it over with.
Hi, this is Elton John. This is my Rocket Hour on Apple Music. And I've had some amazing programs since I started about 6 years ago. But today is the most amazing program yet because my guest is Joni Mitchell. I absolutely adore her. I never really knew her until the last 5 or 6 years. And it's been one of the greatest things in my life to be present and see her and have fun with her and laugh with her and tease her because I just absolutely fall in love with her. I was already in love with her, but now I'm totally in love with her. Okay, we're going to start the program with Carey. That's from the album Blue. Carey, that was written about someone you knew, right?
Yeah, in Matala.
Who was it written about?
I came to Matala because everywhere I was in Athens, we'd be walking down the street, the girl I was traveling with, and they would say to us, sheepy, sheepy, Matala, Matala, which I found out meant hippie, hippie. Go to Matala, that's where the hippies are. So we went to Matala, and we were standing at the ocean's edge, looking out towards Turkey, and Penelope, the girl I was traveling with, was talking about her namesake, Penelope and Ulysses, you know, like the story of the woman whose husband is away, and she's surrounded by suitors, and she's weaving a tapestry. And they keep saying, when will you tell us who you choose? And she said, when I finish my tapestry. And every night she'd tear out everything that she did during the day, right? So we're telling this story when suddenly, boom, there's this huge explosion. I turned around and I saw this red-headed character all in whites, like a white turban with red hair sticking out and white kind of Gandhi-esque kind of costume. Blow out of a restaurant. He was the cook there. He lit the stove and it blew up. And that was how I met Carey Raditz.
Wow, that's an amazing story. Tell me about Blue. It came out in 1971, but it's recently had the most incredible renaissance. I think it was when it was reissued, it went to #1. And I remember going to a concert at Disney Hall where Brandi Carlile sang the whole album without a teleprompter, and I said she was crazy because I wouldn't have had the courage to do that. It was a magical evening, wasn't it?
Yeah.
How did that feel to you, with someone singing that whole album, which is from start to finish? It is one of the classic records of all time. And I was sitting next to you, and the joy from your face was amazing.
Yeah, well, she did such a good job. I mean, you know, there've been a lot of covers of my songs, but she's very true to the original, you know, so it was kind of like going to my own concert.
There's only one person in the world that could have done that, and that's Brandi, because, I mean, your songs are so hard to sing. Yeah. I remember I did a tribute to you at the Hammerstein Ballroom in New York, and you were sitting in the balcony, and I think I sang Free Man in Paris, I'm not sure. But all of us were quaking in our boots because you were sitting there. You're very intimidating because you're such a great artist. And everyone was thinking, we mustn't this up. Anyway, Blue is an astonishing album. And as I say, it has its resurgence, which must have made you very, very happy.
Oh, God. Marcy came in, and said to me, Joni, you're #1. I said, what do you mean I'm #1? And that's how I learned that Blue, 50 years after its release, had gone to #1. That's just crazy. It was fun, though.
You made Blue, you made Court and Spark, Ladies of the Canyon, and then it seems to me as a musician, you wanted to investigate a deeper kind of music, a deeper kind of melody, and you began to make wonderful records like Hijira, Hissing of Summer Lawns, Mingus, Don Juan's Reckless Daughter, and it was just astonishing music. To me, who's a piano player, and listening to you play the pianos and the chords you played and the melodies you made, for me, was like heaven. No one did that except you. Do you think that work that you did then, which I think was really groundbreaking, ever got the recognition that it deserved?
At the time, no. It took a lot of flack, if anything. People thought that it was too intimate. It was almost like Dylan going electric. I think it upset the male singer-songwriters. They go, "Oh, no, do we have to bare our souls like this now?" I think it made people nervous. More nervous than it took to this generation. They seem to be able to face those emotions more easily than my generation.
Well, we're going to play Amelia from Hajira. What is this song about?
Amelia?
Yeah. Amelia Earhart?
Yeah, I was driving across country. I had driven across with a couple of fellas, and their car broke down on the way to San Francisco. So I bought a secondhand Mercedes, and we continued the journey. So I had to drive it back. I was driving back alone, so it was my solo flight. I didn't have a driver's license, and so I was staying behind truckers because they signal when cops are ahead. They flick their lights and everything. And on that journey, I wrote most of the songs on that album, and that one
for Hajira, yeah.
It was an homage to Amelia and her solo flight. I just identified with her solo flight and my solo drive.
When you said you wrote the songs on that journey, did you write them with a guitar? Or did you remember? How did you remember them?
Most of them, I would write the words, and then I'd stop and have lunch or something, and take out a pencil and paper or a pen and write down. I wrote some of them in Charleston. I stayed in Blue Motel Room, for instance. I was staying in a hotel there, and walking on the beach, and I wrote a lot while I stayed there. I wanted to say the hexagram of the heavens. A lot of people don't know what that means, but it's from the I Ching, it's 6 straight lines.
Right.
So the 6 straight lines, the strings of my guitar, and the hexagram of the heavens, I thought a lot of people didn't know what that meant.
Well, we're going to move on to one of Joni's choices, because I always ask my guests to choose something that they like. And there's 3 choices here that are so different and so fabulous. I'm going to start with Lambert, Hendricks and Ross. And you've chosen a track called Charleston Alley from 1959. Annie Ross was Scottish.
Oh, yeah.
And she, Lambert, Hendricks and Ross were a vocal group that were quite extraordinary. And it's from the album The Hottest New Group in Jazz.
Yeah.
And the title is a quote from Downbeat magazine. They were an American trio formed in 1957 by jazz vocalist Dave Lambert, John Hendricks, and Annie Ross, who I said is Scottish. So there's a little British element in here. Why did you choose this?
Because when I was in high school, my friends were a little older than me, and they all went off to college. And I used to go to college parties, and I was at somebody's house, and they played The Hottest New Sound in Jazz. They played that album.
Okay.
And it was one of those musical epiphanies for me. There were only 3 or 4 in my life. I had to have that album, and it was out of print.
Okay.
So I finally found somebody that would sell it to me for $25.
Wow, that's a lot of money for them.
In the 50s it was. I bought that album and I learned every song on it. And I've covered a couple of them on my albums, Centerpiece and My Endless Told Me.
You're an amazing woman. I mean, the influences you have and the fact that you can sing Lambert, Hendricks and Ross is astonishing to me.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, it's amazing.
I love
You
that
should
song.
do that on stage.
Well, at the Grammys and everything, so tuning, I sing that when I'm climbing the mountain and doing my
Yeah.
therapy. And when I was walking out on stage at the Grammys and at Washington too, at the Kennedy Center, all the time I'm singing that song inside, and I'm walking to that groove. It's the greatest walking groove,
It's so great. And
Yeah.
it's from 1959, and it sounds so amazing, so joyous.
Yeah.
We're going to go back to you now, and that's a song called Sex Kills, which is from the album Turbulent Indigo from 1994. So we're moving up away from the 70s and the 80s into the latter part of your recording. According to Rolling Stone, Joni Mitchell surveyed every 90s America and painted a picture that now seems depressingly prophetic. She said at the time, I've never been a feminist, but we haven't had pop songs up until recently that were so aggressively dangerous to women. What did you mean by that?
Aggressively dangerous to women?
Yeah.
Oh, well, you know.
People saying rap music with my hose and stuff like that.
Yeah, hose and booty, you know.
Yeah, women were kind of ornaments in those.
Yeah, and even look at the way women dress at the Grammys now.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when it was kind of starting, when Norman took some pictures of Linda Ronstadt in her underwear and Carly Simon, you know, and I thought, oh, God, do we got to do this? So I just decided to just be naked on my record. Get it over with.
This is a historic occasion, and I'm so thrilled to be with you. I've been in this room a few times. It's got the most amazing ambiance, walls covered with your beautiful paintings. The piano behind me, which I played. There's your chair. I call it the throne. When I first came up here, you know, and we had the Joni jams, I remember you just played the bongos.
Yeah.
And you sang Love Potion Number 9, Summertime, and what was the other one? Poison Ivy.
Yeah.
Those 3 songs. But Joni, the Newport Folk Festival, you played guitar. And you sang, and it's extraordinary to see how music has brought you back to life.
Yeah.
It's the most beautiful feeling.
Yeah.
I always knew music was so, it's been my life for my whole life. It's been with me every part, when I've been miserable, when I've been sad, when I've been happy and addicted, and you know, tearing my hair out, what was left of it. But you, I've seen you through music, and of course your incredible rehabilitation, but music has helped you so much. And it's beautiful to watch you evolve. And people out there, you haven't heard things from the Newport Jazz Folk Festival yet, but I think there's going to be an album coming out of that, right?
Yeah, we're trying
It's
to put that out.
extraordinary how good it is. And you didn't have much in rehearsal, did you?
Didn't have any. We
You
just
stood up and
winged it.
played guitar.
Yeah, that I had to figure out what I did, you know, and I couldn't sing the key. I've become an alto. I'm not a soprano anymore, so I couldn't sing the song. And I thought people might feel lighted that if I just played the guitar part, but I liked the guitar part to that song. So anyway, it was very well received, much to my delight.
Yeah. But your voice now reminds me, and I hope this doesn't offend you, of Nina Simone.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
She was
she's
one of
an
my
alto.
favorite artists. Billie Holiday too.
Yeah, Billie Holiday.
Yeah, those great singers from that era. You, in your latter part of your life, have got a new voice, and it must be fantastic to sing differently than what you did before.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. I mean, for example, on the show she did Both Sides Now. What a beautiful song that is, and how it's resonated now when it was written so many years ago. But it's just more relevant now, I think, than it was when you wrote it.
It's not an ingenue role.
Yeah.
I wrote it when I was in my early 20s, and I took a lot of ridicule for it, you know, from,
Oh, it's a most
what do you know
beautiful
about
song.
life? You're only 21, you know, like, so, and I saw Mabel Mercer perform it in New York.
Yeah.
I went uptown to, I forget what venue was, but she had on a black dress with silver lace and a red banner that went across her chest. And she sang Both Sides Now, and it was the best I ever heard it. And I
Who
went,
was this, sorry?
Mabel Mercer.
Oh, Mabel Mercer, yeah.
So I went backstage to tell her, you know, that I loved the performance of it, but I didn't tell her that I was the author. So I said, you know, I've heard various recordings of that song, but you bring something to it, you know, that other people haven't been able to do, you know. You know, it's not a song for an ingenue. You have to bring some age to it. Well, she took offense.
Really?
Yeah. So I insulted her. I called her an old lady as far as she was concerned. So I got out of there in a hell of a hurry. But I think I finally became an old lady myself and could sing the song right.
I hate it when that happens. That happened to me with Eartha Kitt, but we won't go into that right now. Both sides now, on the Newport Folks Festival, when it's actually released, you will go nuts because the quality of your voice and the resonance of your voice and the way you phrase is so much different to how you did originally. Why did you like the orchestral version more than your original?
Because when I performed it, the orchestra gathered around me, and I played with classical musicians before, and they're always reading the Wall Street Journal behind their sheet music, and they always treat you like it's a condescension to be playing with you. But everybody, the men and Englishmen, were weeping. You know, they were playing and weeping, and it was so emotional. You know, like, and that is on the record. I mean, it's amazing, like how it can make you weep, that track, because people were weeping as they played it. You know, I think it's just.
Well, let's have a good old weep, shall we? Recorded in the Big Room at Air London Studios in Hampstead. I know the room well. It's a magical room, and it's a magical recording. Well, we're going to go from that, which was sublime, to not the ridiculous, but we're going to go to Chuck Berry, one of your choices. This is, of course, from 1958, and Johnny Be Good. I actually did a version of this, which was horrible, on our album. But was Chuck Berry one of the first people you loved in rock and roll? He wrote so many great songs, right?
Well, I used to go to the Avenue 8 swimming pool in Saskatoon. They had a jukebox and a patio, and I would go. I didn't swim much, but not at that pool. Yeah. But I danced on the patio to Johnny Be Good for what's one of the most played records there.
I mean, how many times has this been recorded by people and played by people?
Well, he was the best
greatest
rock and
roll guitarist ever.
Yeah, he was a goat.
Doesn't get any better than that from a rock and roll point of view.
That's rock
Chuck
and
Berry,
roll.
Johnny Be Good.
The king of rock and roll.
Yeah. I asked Johnny if she could play guitar like that. She said no.
No way.
Probably not many people could play that. Keith Richards can do it.
Yeah, I suppose he should.
We're going to go now to a later part of your work, to the album Shine, which is 2007. And you loved this album because you said it's as serious work as I've ever done, and you were inspired by the war in Iraq. And did that enrage you, the war in Iraq?
All wars kind of outrage me, you know. I'm a war baby. I mean, I was born in the middle of World War II, but it just seems to me that, I guess it's an old hippie thought, you know, like make love, not war, kind of. But you'd think we'd wise up and take care of the ecology situation instead of starting wars.
War means big business. I remember the Iraq War enraged both David and myself. David went on a march in London with 1 million people, and the next day the Prime Minister, Tony Blair, said, people who march have blood on their hands.
Blood on their hands, why?
There's nothing more powerful than people marching and the power of the people. And in Iran now, the women are doing it, and they're getting the hardest time. But this album, Shine, is your voice different on this album? Is that why you like it? Or are the songs a little bit deeper?
Well, it's the first album that I composed mostly in the studio, which is the way a lot of people do it. Yeah. I mean, there was a keyboard there that had every sound you could imagine in it, and the sounds inspired the songs.
So it was a synthesizer?
It was a synthesizer full of all kinds of sounds. A great muted trumpet sound called Legend, and Hannah, like I laid down the bass part first and built off of that. It was a different way of making albums.
Did you play mostly everything on the keyboard on this album, right?
Yeah, everything.
Now, you've announced this show next year at the Gorge with Brandy. What do you think about it? Are you excited about it?
No, it's too far away to be excited about it.
I get you, totally. I don't think about things. People say, you're playing Dodger Stadium soon. What do you think? And I said, I don't think about it until I get there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you sat the same, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no point. You've chosen another brilliant artist, Edith Piaf, who I've always loved. Because I've always loved French singers like Charles Trenet and people like that. There's just something about the French and the way. And it's Les Cloches Les Trois Cloches, the Three Bells. And it's Edith Piaf, Elle est compagne de la chanson. And she was totally an amazing artist, very tiny. There's been shows about her. She just had so much inside of her as a small person. Is that what attracted you to her? The passion about her voice?
Well, I went to a birthday party, Helen Lafreniere's house, and she lived in a shanty a couple of blocks away from our house on the outskirts of town, and it was all covered in metal billboards, to like, it was a real genuine shanty. My mother didn't want me to go because I was a sickly child, and she thought that I would pick up some infection going there, But I went, and the mother, Mrs. Lafreniere, was a frail little woman with a sweater held together with a safety pin and pink around her eyes. There was something wrong with her. And there was a long table. It was made out of a door lying on sawhorses. And I got the seat where the doorknob was, because I put my elbow on the table and I went through the hole. And in the kitchen, I heard this men's choir. And then I heard this voice come bubbling up from the bottom of it, and I never heard anything so amazing. I said to Mrs. Lafreniere, "Who was that?" And she said, "Oh, that's the little sparrow." And I remember thinking, you look like a little sparrow yourself, She was a tiny little French woman. That's how I first heard Edith Piaf and this song, which amazed me as an 8-year-old.
That is so
That's
beautiful.
so beautiful.
It was recorded in 1946, but Edith Piaf first met the French vocal group Les Compagnes de la Chanson in 1944, and they performed together in German-occupied Paris, and they sang this song. Can you imagine how moving that must have been to see them sing this song in 1944? And they recorded it after the war was finished. But that is just so beautiful. It's very moving. I've got goosebumps.
Yeah.
The choir and her
Gorgeous.
voice. It's just...
Yeah, and
It's
the
when people can
arrangement,
make a difference with their voice. It's just, ooh. This is the longest rocket hour I've ever done, and it's going to stay there because I'm having the best time, and I want to thank you for your time because, to get you to do this, you don't do anything usually, and I just adore you so much, as you know, and I love you. And it's been my privilege, I say, to get to know you over the last few years, and hopefully we'll have many more years together.
Yeah.
We're going to end on a song like we did. We started with something from Blue, and we're going to finish from something with Blue, because A Case of You is probably one of your most famous songs, without question, right?
I guess so, yeah. It's been recorded
it's been very good to you, that song.
Yeah.
It's had so many
And
cover
River.
versions. You never get fed up with hearing this song. Every time I hear this song, I hear something different. And the version that is on, I keep mentioning it, the Newport Folk Festival, is quite amazing. One day, I want you to sit in this room, like we're doing now, but with some recording equipment. I want you to make an album in this room. Like Johnny Cash did with Hurt. And he was on his deathbed. You're not going to be on your deathbed. But I think you should make an album in this room because it's so magical.
Yeah,
It's every corner of this room is Joni.
yeah.
Everything about it is Joni. It's got the ambiance of, I've been to a lot of places in my life, but this room is one of the most special rooms I've ever been to in my whole life. And I really want you to consider making a record, maybe new songs. The way you're going, you're tearing out the world at the moment.
We did some background vocals up in the balcony once. That's the only time we've recorded in this room.
That is my big ambition for you. I would like to thank you again for being my guest. You've been absolutely amazing. Your choice of music has been astonishing. Case of You by Joni Mitchell on the Elton John Rocket Hour on Apple Music closes the show with one of the greatest artists of all time and one of the greatest writers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Come here. Love you so.